Our badass today on the show, AJ, is Greg Williams. He's an oil rig manager for Vantage Drilling, and he's co-author of Our Horizon, In the Moment. Real lives, real people, real heroes.
Right.
1,000 pages worth of investigation report from the U.S. Chemical Board. There's opinions and there's facts. So,
when you were there, did you look around and say, "Holy crap, this place isn't safe"?
No, not a bit.
This has to be horrible for you. This is like being with a squad of people. You're going through war together. You leave, and then they get wiped out in a battle, and you're not there.
Right.
Survivor's guilt thing, right? The book is just filled with my memories about that, those 8 years.
You ever have like an Armageddon moment where you're on the ship and investors are there and they're like busting your balls, and then all of a sudden you hit oil and like everyone's covered in oil and like you're popping champagne?
Like, I've been doing this 25 years. I have Armageddon moments all the time. I love the business and I love the people in the business.
Yeah, so when you watched Armageddon, did you look at every different personality and say, "Oh yeah, I know all these guys"?
That's so-and-so, that's so-and-so,
yeah, right.
so-and-so.
Yeah.
There's definitely some comparisons to a few of those guys, that's for sure.
Have you had accidents that something goes wrong, now there's oil everywhere and there's like just giant metal beams falling and that whole thing there that we see in the movies?
No, in fact, I'm very proud to say I've never been involved in something like that. Never.
Can I say it's weird that you were on that? You were on Deepwater Horizon so long, and then after you leave, something happened. I almost want to make a judgment that somebody who came in after you wasn't as safety conscious as you were.
They were all professionals. They were dealing with something that they did not know the full potential of. Let's just put it that way. They were not fully aware of the power of what they were dealing with at the time. So,
how far down do you go for oil? Like how deep is that water? How far down do you go?
Still, the deepest water that I've been in right now has been with the Horizon. It was in right at 10,000 foot of water. It still holds a record for the deepest dynamically positioned semi-submersible latching subsea. Yeah, so 10,000 foot. That puts you on the seabed. You look at it from a million-year perspective and how the continents split from themselves, and you can follow that formation over to another part of the world and do the same work over there.
When you watched Deepwater Horizon, what was your impression? Did they get close to what really happened, or was it too Hollywood for you?
I've never watched it.
Oh.
That says a lot.
Yeah, right.
And that was part of the book, and then obviously the part of the National Geographic documentary that was behind it. 2 years later, that kind of put some of the human back into it. They didn't want it to be dehumanized, right?
Did you watch the National Geographic version?
I was actually part of the production team for that. I went through probably 12 to 15 rough drafts of that before they published it.
Gotcha. Was there stuff they wanted to put in that you didn't want in, or stuff you wanted in that they didn't want to put in?
They stayed more with the human side of it, and what these guys do. The production studio that was managing for National Geographic 1895 films, they use original audio from that time and original footage. So it's just kind of like looking at one of the older documentaries, whether it's JFK or Marilyn Monroe. They did it in the same fashion. So they used the original court audios, going through the hearings, as well as some of the Coast Guard audio and footage from the helos with the pickup winches, and just they did a really, really fantastic job with it. Due to the availability of footage, we had to kind of realign later on where we were headed with it.
If I watched it, would I come to a conclusion watching it, or do they kind of leave it up to the viewer?
It's about the people, so it's not you won't come to a conclusion about the incident.
Gotcha. And for those who don't know what happened and what the movie Deepwater Horizon was all about, can you just give us a kind of an overview of that story? What happened?
April the 20th, 2010, an explosion on board the Deepwater Horizon as they were drilling the Macondo Project for British Petroleum in the Gulf of Mexico. There was 126 crew members on board. The management teams from both British Petroleum and Transocean were on board the vessel that day. Executive management, so not just rig management. Or every 5 years, these rigs go into a service period, which usually lasts anywhere from a month to 2 months. And so BP and Transocean were on board speaking about things that needed to be put into the project and things that needed to be worked on after 10 years of service. So on the 19th, they TD'd the well 18th, 19th, and they went into what we call a plug and abandon. And this was a TNA, so it was a temporary plug and abandonment where they go in and cement up, isolate all the sections, and then they get ready to what we call displace the riser and then unlatch the BOPs. They do what's called a negative test. The well is all one weight, and then what you do is you reduce the hydrostatic pressure to induce what's called an inflow. We're trying to get the well to flow. A couple of confusing statements made about the first couple of tests, and then they finally performed a third test and got the results and they all agreed on the results. Carried on displacing the well. Mud was being displaced out of the well bore is whenever the gas came in, pushed all the rest of the fluid out and then ignited the rig. So,
how powerful of an explosion was that?
As the gas voided the riser and came up through the equipment. Now this is all facts. I'm not. This is not opinion, but it went up. It went through what's called a vertical mud gas separator vent. And so this vent line goes all the way to the very tip top of the rig. So the tip top of the rig of the Horizon was like 230 feet or so above sea level. And the water was flat calm. There was no wind. And so this gas was coming out of the vent line, settling down onto the aft deck. The engine intake, the Wartsillas was there. And as soon as the gas was settling down, the intake vents was taking the gas and then putting it straight into the manifold.
Jesus.
Wow.
So from what I understand, the sound, just the sound of the explosion when it happened was enough to deafen you. So, and then that was people inside the accommodations, outside the accommodations. It was just, it was catastrophic. You take most of these vessels that are ship-shaped and you're looking at, 60 foot wide by 1,000 foot long. Well, the Horizon was a square. You take all of that and put it inside of a square, and you don't have very much property to get away from something like that. So you got to be very quick and very fast. And if you're anywhere in the vicinity, or if any explosion like that happens anywhere on the vessel, you know it. Even a small one, you know it, because the whole vessel will shake.
Yeah, that's catastrophic. And then how fast before help can get there? What happens? Were you called in because you had experience on that rig?
The accident happened 9:30, 9:45, something like that on the 20th. And I got a call at 10 minutes after 10 from one of the guys that I used to work with that was on the same crew. At that time, I was in Halifax, Nova Scotia, going through some training for, it's called cold water survival. And I was going to go out and bring another one of the rigs into Canada and do some work on the drilling package. It's basically the same thing that Transocean and BP were talking about doing with the Horizon. I was actually doing it already on another rig in Canada and preparing for the Horizon the following year. He called me and said, "Hey, the rig's on fire." And I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" He said, "It's all over the news." So this was from the time it ignited, from the time that they had a camera on it, was within an hour.
And then how long did it take him to stop that oil flow?
Well, it took a long time. Technology that was needed to care of that particular break, it didn't exist. So that had to basically be invented. There's equipment on the market now that protect us from things like that.
I just remember, I think it was the CEO of BP, doing a press conference, and he was doing them, a couple times a day, and he said, "I just want to get my life back."
Yeah.
And this is after, there was a loss of life from the crew.
Yeah,
and
you say that, yep.
I was so pissed when I heard that. And I think shortly after that, he was let go.
I followed the case through C-SPAN because I was all over the world during this time. And then I came back from Newfoundland during that project in Canada and attended the memorial in Jackson, Mississippi. Throughout this time frame there, so that was a year after the event actually happened, before I came back and took another position in the Gulf of Mexico. And I was on board the rig with probably another 5 to 10 people that was on the horizon during the event that I used to work with. And every year, doing a memorial for these guys on board the vessel. We blow the ship's horn every year 11 times on April the 20th. It doesn't matter where we're at, where the crew's at, how many different rigs there are in the world, or where they're at in the world, they still do the memorial.
That's beautiful.
Respect, yeah.
I just got chills when you said that.
Yeah.
You should be on the vessel whenever they do it. And normally it's someone that was working on the horizon during that time that pulls the ship's whistle.
Wow. Well, Greg, thanks for coming on and sharing. I have a feeling that if we weren't on the radio right now, we'd get a more colorful. I feel like you're holding yourself back here.
Got to choose your words carefully, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
It's one of those things to where, I was a happy employee with Transocean for many, many, many years. And I enjoyed working for Transocean and I enjoyed working for BP, both. Made some really good friendships, and we broke a lot of records, and we did a lot of things that helped bring the U.S. to, some of the energy independence that they saw here 4 or 5 years ago. So all of those projects that the Horizon done and the team on board the Horizon were, 20-year projects that would continuously give energy to the United States, and none of that, it gets missed in some of this stuff, right? So it's kind of all these projects they're doing is like laying foundation and background work, for things that's going to be happening 15 or 20 years later for the country. And so they forget about, all of the stuff and all the groundwork that's laid. Some of these wells that the Horizon and BP drilled, 15 years ago, some of them are just coming online. They're just bringing them online.
Right. This one incident shines the light on that and not the other part of the industry where you guys are out there doing it every day, bringing all these wells online, doing it safely, successfully, breaking records. Yeah, no, I hear you.
You're exactly right. And that was one of the things why you don't want to dehumanize something. We know that there was a huge loss of tourism. We know that there were people impacted on the Gulf Coast all the way from Texas to Florida. But we have to remember that, overpressurized formations seep oil into the water every day. You actually drill a well bore, releases some of that overpressure. So, it's naturally flowing onto the beaches in California. So, it's not an uncommon event to have oil on a beach, but an uncontrolled spill like that is catastrophic, and we know it. It takes years to get over it, but you have to remember, behind every one of those court testimonies, there was a family, somebody that's connected to each one of those voices. So,
well, Greg, thank you for coming on.
Yes.
I'm going to watch that National Geographic special, but the book is called Our Horizon in the Moment, Real Lives, Real People, Real Heroes. Thanks for coming on, Greg Williams. Appreciate it, brother.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Anytime.
All right.
Bye.